It's a prime number. Maybe it means something, Wayne said. Like what? I asked. I don't know. He shrugged. Maybe the fact that you're prime or something? Wayne grinned when he said that. But you're not, Mike said. What? It's not a prime number. You can divide 111 by 3 and get 37. Mike was using the calculator function on his phone, so there was no point in arguing. Oh, that didn't stop Wayne's imagination. Still, is that the square root? What? I think it's the square root of something, Mike said, working the calculator. Yeah. 12,321 is the square of 111. Number. It's weird that it does that 123221. But that's not what I meant. Mike took up the calculator again. Number. The square root of 111 is 10.5 something. I think you're thinking of 121. 11 times 11 is 121. Oh, Wayne perked up after a minute. Still, if it's 111, it's like 101 Dalmatians. But here it's dudes. And then she added 10 more. I never thought of it that way. My friends were doing the math, trying to get me drunk because the night before, I had learned that I had become the 111th man my wife had slept with in her nearly 3 decades of life. Of course, the previous 110 men were before we started dating, and I had no reason to think that she had cheated during the year we were dating or the year we were married. But I still couldn't recover from finding out what she had been before. It was made worse by the fact that I didn't get drunk at all. My friends, my wife, and I were in our late 20s or early 30s, and our bodies couldn't take as much abuse as they had when we were younger. Heck, these days I even went to bed at a reasonable hour. However, it was the alcohol that unlocked the secret, perhaps due to the lower tolerance of our age group. My wife's name is Randy, and that name is now a double-edged sword, given what I know about her previously hidden sexual history. A few days earlier, she and I had flown across the country to attend the wedding of one of her college friends. I had not previously been acquainted with any of them. Randy and I had met at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. We ran the same route and, starved for human interaction in those locked-in days, we began chatting while running side by side at the mandatory 6-foot distance. Eventually, after getting all our shots and testing negative for the virus, we decided we needed to have more fun with each other than with the government meddling in our lives and moved in together when her apartment lease expired. After a year of living together, once the courts opened for private meetings, we quickly had a civil marriage ceremony without guests. After all, we were both approaching 30, and Randy wanted to have kids soon. Moving to the present day, the venue for Randy's college friend's wedding was a vineyard in the hills overlooking Palo Alto. At one of the pre-wedding gatherings, after lots of fine wine, the friends began to indulge in reminiscences. Among those memories was a conversation about how surprised everyone was that Randy had settled down, especially after she had slept with 100 guys in college alone. It turns out that when she realized during her freshman year that she had already slept with 10 guys, she wanted to see if she could get to 50 and become a semi-hoe. She and her friends then decided that it would be just fine if she got to 100 by the time she graduated from college and could become a full-fledged one. She did just that. I wasn't surprised when I found out about it. She's very determined. After reaching 100, she slept with the next 10 guys in the 6 years between graduation and meeting me. Randy and her friends had a great time reminiscing about their glory days, laughing and hooting. Eventually, however, Randy noticed that I wasn't laughing, or even smiling. Not at all. Suddenly, they all realized it. You didn't know? One of them asked in surprise. I just got up and walked away. Randy chased after me and tried to grab my arm as I left the restaurant. The maitre d' was standing next to us when I yanked her fingers away. That person does not have my permission to touch me, I told him, pointing at her. He gently held her back as I walked away. I think she might have cried, but I didn't care. I packed up, and in less than 15 minutes, I was already in the rental car on my way to the airport. I probably shouldn't have gotten behind the wheel after what I'd had to drink, but I desperately needed to leave. Why? Why was I leaving? Why did her body count matter? The simplest answer was that I would never have married her if I'd known she was such a... But that's not fair, I hear you say. It's her body, and it was all before you got together. You'll probably say that shouldn't matter. This is her past, and you are her future, right? It's not even any of your business, you add. Isn't it all about your silly male insecurities? About your fragile male ego, you ask? Maybe it is. All I know is that I felt visceral revulsion. Visceral means that the feeling is deep in the viscera, in the gut. It's very close to the feeling I get when I use a toilet that hasn't been emptied in about a year and actually look and smell what's in the tank. I don't know about you, but it usually makes me vomit. This is exactly the same state I was in emotionally after hearing Rhee's big reveal. Back at the bar, Wayne still hadn't given up on his controversial analysis. Can't you think of it this way? When you buy a new car, it depreciates 1,000,000% or something as soon as you drive it out of the parking lot. That's why many financial advisors tell you that you should only buy used cars. They already have depreciation built into them. Randy is like a depreciated used car. That makes it the best long-term value. I didn't buy that analogy. What kind of car? What kind of car do you think Randy is? He paused while Mike watched him. I don't know. It's built like kapow and the face is pretty. Pretty eyes, he wondered. Or fantasized. I'm thinking about a used Lexus, Wayne finally said. Not used, Mike said. Used is what we mean. Then I added, I could have left the car dealership thinking I got a used Lexus, but I actually got something more than a used Yugo with burned-out gaskets and a shot transmission leaking oil. With those words, I left the bar because I didn't want to wake up with a hangover, and I wanted to get to bed at a reasonable time that night. I did some thinking. I don't tend to analyze much when making important decisions. A few bad experiences in my younger years convinced me that every decision I ever made ignoring my instincts was wrong. In this case, I suppose we should have discussed body counts before we got together. I knew she wasn't a virgin, but never in a million years did I expect the body count to be so high. I couldn't get over the fact that 110 guys had slept with her. I didn't care if she was doing it 2 or 3 at a time, or if the dudes were lining up in the hallway, or if it just happened on different nights one at a time. At that volume, however she did it, she'd need some sort of Department of Motor Vehicle-style queue management system with online booking functionality to control the crowd. I felt like tearing up again. I wasn't Captain Kirk exploring space where no man had yet set foot. Rather, I was licking the floor of the men's room at the New York Port Authority bus station, where countless men had piled in over the years. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Was I being unreasonable? Who cared about that? It was what I was feeling. It was emotional. Anyone who disagreed had my blessing to marry this woman or at least sleep with her. After all, it wasn't often that she said no. And if she'd been so flippant about sex before, what kept her from trying to hit 200 while we were married? It didn't seem to mean that much to her. You're just embarrassing her. You'll say if you're a woman. Maybe. But I don't think she was ashamed. She certainly wasn't embarrassed when she laughed in the winery, until I got up from the table. I was lucky. When I left her friend's wedding, I took a red-eye flight that same night and got home at the crack of dawn the next day. There were messages and voicemails on my phone, but I deleted them all. It was over between us. I could no longer think about touching her without my stomach cramping. Sure, therapy was an option, but to what end? I didn't want to touch her anyway, not without wanting to throw up. And having children with her? What was she going to tell them about how to behave if they were girls? What would be an acceptable number of previous partners? Who the hell knows? Definitely something in the neighborhood of double digits, not something where they'd have to think about having to put a comma in that number in the near future. Something maybe half my age would probably be the upper limit of what I'd be willing to live with. In the next relationship, I'll have to make sure that question is at the top of the list, along with what kind of food do you like? Quickly orienting myself, I called the movers the day after the math discussion at the bar to pack up her stuff and take it to storage. We were still living in my apartment, but we had already started picking out a place to live. My lease was now for 1 month. I informed the management office that I would not be renewing the contract. There was a high demand for apartments, so they agreed to waive the notice period, and I had 2 weeks to pack up my belongings and find a new place to live. They were kind enough to change the locks. I suppose Randy could go to court and demand access to the marital home, but I didn't think she would bother. Learning that the lease was ending and all her personal belongings had been removed, We could fight about the furniture later, whenever she showed up. I assumed she'd show up to the wedding with all her friends. After all, they understood her. Only then did it occur to me to wonder how many of the guys who were with us last night were her bed partners. At that moment, I also wondered if her partners had been women. Had she had lesbian sex before? It never occurred to me to ask that. If so, did she consider them differently? Fortunately, I found a place to lie down for a while. A military friend was going out of town for 6 months and needed a tenant. It was a nice little townhouse. Randy tried to contact me, but I successfully evaded her and was able to work remotely, so she couldn't ambush me at the office. She was staying with her parents. That's where I served her with the divorce papers. Call me insensitive. Call me insecure. Basically, call me gone. Our state had recently almost completely abolished fault-based divorce, so I didn't even need a reason other than, I don't want to be married anymore. She and her parents wanted to talk. I said I would do it, but only in a public park where I could leave whenever I wanted, and I would film the whole thing. They agreed. Randy looked gaunt. She had rings around her eyes, as if she hadn't slept, alone or with someone else. Randy's father, with whom I always found common ground, said he was embarrassed to find out what a mess his daughter had been in high school, and that he was glad she seemed to have changed as she got older. He didn't say anything to me because he thought I knew and because it was none of his business. Then he asked me, "How many bodies do you have, including Randy?" "5, I said. "Oh," he said. "All of them were in exclusive relationships lasting at least 3 months each," I added. They all sort of fell silent. "You?" I asked her father. Randy's father blushed but replied, 8. "And you?" I asked Randy's mother. She blushed more than her husband and looked like she was about to say something rude, but her husband glared at her. 20. "Apparently it's a dominant gene," I said. It was Randy's mother's turn to grin at me, but not at her husband. This was interesting, I thought. "So, Randy and I have a ratio of about 22-1, I said. "And that bothers you because?" asked Randy's father. "I'm wondering how soon she'll get bored and want to switch to 112. Or maybe try for 115. Or 200. Randy started to cry. "Can't you see she's changed?" her mom asked. "A girl who likes that kind of variety doesn't tell me she's easy to satisfy. Maybe she's just had fewer opportunities in the last few years, especially with COVID. Or maybe she just wanted to secure a sucker to raise the bastards her future lovers would make of her." Randy's sobs intensified. "That won't help," her mother said after a while. "How's that?" I asked. "I care about Randy's body count because sex means something to me. It's the ultimate expression of love and connection. Besides the fact that it's fun to her, on the other hand, it obviously means nothing, at least nothing beyond pleasurable spasms. Which means that when she gets bored later or just wants a change because she seems to like it, there's nothing to stop her from looking elsewhere for it. Because sex means nothing. Like I said. "Well, that's not fair," Randy protested. "What are you saying?" "Look," I interrupted. "I don't care what she says." That surprised them all. The reality is that even if I'm pressured not to divorce her, there's no way in hell I'm touching her again. Randy cried even harder. Her father looked like he was about to say something, but I held up my hand. "Let me say this. You've seen the movie Brothers in Arms, right, Steve?" He nodded. There's a scene in the first episode where Lieutenant Winters leads Easy Company on a night march when they're in training, right? They complain about Captain Sobel because he's always canceling weekend passes and making them march on Fridays, right? He smiled weakly. "Yeah, I've watched it a dozen times. A World War II company consisted of 200 to 250 men, right?" "Yeah. And Hollywood cheats visually, so when they filmed that scene, it didn't have 200 or 250 men in it. They just made it look that way. I bet if I did a freeze frame, I could count about 100 people." Okay, Steve said, trying to guess where I was going with this. "In other words, this scene shows about as many men, at one time as she screwed in college, marching together." "I get the point," he said. His wife looked badly hurt. Randy's cries turned into silent sobs. Honestly, I've forgotten the rest of the names, but I'm sure Randy has too. But all those marching men are in my memory, and I'm just one of the crowd. When I'm covered in dirt and sweat and wearing a uniform, no one can tell me apart from everyone else. At that moment, Randy ran back to their car. Randy's father nodded, took his wife's hand firmly, and followed Randy. There were no more attempts at reconciliation after that. Randy's lawyer sent my attorney Randy's wedding and engagement rings, along with a note saying that she wanted to put the tumultuous days behind her and settle down with a man who truly loved her, and regretted that I was not strong and confident enough to be that man. She stopped fighting, and the court granted the divorce suit. I heard from friends that she started dating again, and in a short time she had already had 121 boyfriends. So she did make it to 11 squared. As for me, my neighbors in the rented townhouse were a family of Indian immigrants. Their voluptuous 22-year-old daughter turned out to be a virgin, sexually curious, peering over the barrel of a marriage of convenience, and in a rebellious mood. Her parents had canceled her graduation from college, where she had graduated with honors from medical school, to visit her older brother, whose wife was giving birth to their first grandchild, a boy. This neglected daughter turned out to be an absolute delight. I didn't even have to try very hard. When we were kissing and she started to resist, I simply said I understood that she wanted to be a good girl like her mother wanted. Maybe after we were done with her, she'd get to Randy's lifetime record. But at least I'd be like Captain Kirk, piloting her last frontier for the first time. And that was fine with me.